My son showed me Grandma's house on Google Maps, but what I saw in the window made my blood run cold. I thought she was just paranoid, until I found her notebook and saw the face myself. It started as something innocent. My son, Caleb, was sitting next to me on the couch one evening, scrolling through his tablet. He's 12, curious about everything, especially places. He's got this thing for maps, Google Earth, Street View, satellite images. He likes to zoom in on places we've been, places we talk about. That night he asked me, "Dad, where did Grandma live before she passed?" I told him, she lived in a small house in Springfield, Missouri, on Birchwood Lane. He typed it in, and within seconds he was dragging the little yellow Street View man onto the screen. I leaned in, not expecting much. Just a blurry image of the old neighborhood, maybe the front porch I used to sit on as a kid. But when the screen loaded I felt something shift. It was the house, or same faded blue siding, same cracked driveway. The lawn was overgrown, like it hadn't been mowed in weeks. That was strange because my mother had always kept it neat. Even when her arthritis got bad, she'd pay the neighbor's kid to mow it. But what really caught my eye was the date in the corner, August 2017. That was 2 months before she died. I told Caleb to hand me the tablet. He did, and I zoomed in. The front door was open. Not wide, just a crack. Enough to see that the screen door was shut behind it. I stared at that door for a long time. Something about it felt wrong. Like it was inviting, but not in a good way. I clicked to move down the street, then back again, trying to get a better angle. And then I saw it. In the window to the left of the door, behind the curtain, there was a face. Not a clear one. Just the outline. Pale skin, dark eyes, pressed close to the glass. I felt my stomach drop. It wasn't my mother. I knew that immediately. She never stood at that window. She always sat in the back room, where the light was better. And this face, it looked too still. Too deliberate. Like it was watching the camera. I didn't say anything to Caleb. I just told him to go brush his teeth and get ready for bed. He shrugged and went upstairs. I sat there with the tablet in my lap, staring at that image. I zoomed in as far as I could, but the resolution broke down into pixels. Still, the shape was there. A head, slightly tilted. Eyes that didn't blink. I checked the timestamp again. August 2017. My mother had called me that month, said she was feeling off. Said she thought someone had been in the house. I told her she was imagining things. She was 82, starting to forget things. I brushed it off. I didn't sleep that night. I kept thinking about that face. The next morning, I called my sister, Rachel. She lives in Denver. I asked her if she remembered Mom saying anything strange before she died. Rachel said, "You mean besides the usual paranoia?" I said, "Yeah. Did she ever mention someone watching her?" Rachel paused. Then she said, "Actually, she said she saw someone in the backyard once. Said he was standing by the shed, just staring at the house." I told her to call the police, but she didn't want to make a fuss. I asked Rachel if she had a photo of the house from that time. She said she might and she'd look. I hung up and went back to the tablet. I searched for other images of the house. Nothing newer than 2017. I tried Zillow, Redfin, anything that might have a listing photo. The house had been sold in 2019, but the listing was gone. I found one blurry photo on a real estate blog. The siding had been repainted. The window was covered with plywood. I couldn't let it go. I called the Springfield Police Department and asked if there had been any reports of trespassing or break-ins at that address in 2017. The woman on the phone said she'd check. She came back a few minutes later and said there was one report in September. Someone had called about noises in the backyard, but no one was found. I asked if the caller was my mother. She said yes. I hung up and stared at the wall. I felt this cold weight in my chest. Like I'd missed something important. Like I'd ignored her when she needed me. I kept thinking about that face. It wasn't just the shape, it was the way it was positioned. Like it knew the camera was coming. Like it wanted to be seen. That weekend, I drove to Springfield. I didn't tell Rachel. I just packed a bag and left. It's about a 6-hour drive from where I live in Kansas City. I got there late in the afternoon. The house looked different. New paint, new mailbox. But the shape was the same. I parked across the street and sat in my car for a while. Then I got out and walked up to the porch. I didn't expect anyone to answer, but a man opened the door. Mid-30s, beard, friendly face. I told him I used to live there, that my mother had owned the house. He said, "Oh yeah, we bought it from her estate. Sorry for your loss." I nodded. Then I asked him if he'd ever noticed anything strange about the house. He looked at me funny and said, "Like what?" I said, "Like someone watching. Or being inside when they shouldn't be." He hesitated. Then he said, "Actually, when we moved in, the basement door was locked from the inside. We had to break it open. Found a bunch of old blankets down there. And a chair. Like someone had been staying there." I felt my throat tighten. I asked him if he still had the chair. He said no, they threw it out. I asked if he'd ever seen anyone around the house. He said no, but his wife swore she saw someone in the backyard once, late at night. Said it looked like a man just standing there. I thanked him and walked back to my car. I didn't know what I was looking for anymore. I just knew something had happened. Something I hadn't seen. Something I hadn't wanted to see. That night, I checked into a motel. I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the basement. About the blankets. About the chair. I remembered my mother saying she heard footsteps at night. I remembered telling her it was probably the house settling. I got up around 3 a.m. and drove back to the house. I parked down the street and walked up to the backyard. The shed was still there. I walked over and tried the door. It was locked. I looked through the crack between the boards. Nothing but darkness. Then I turned around and looked at the house. At the window. The same one from the street view image. And I swear to God I saw the curtain move. Just a little. Like someone had brushed past it. I didn't go back to the motel. I got in my car and drove all the way home. I didn't stop. I didn't eat. I just drove. When I got back, Caleb was asleep. I sat in the living room and stared at the tablet. At that image. At that face. And then I did something I hadn't done in years. I prayed. I didn't tell anyone about the trip. Not Rachel, not Caleb, not my wife, though she probably noticed something was off. I was quieter. I stopped watching TV. I started locking the doors earlier than usual. I even covered the windows in the living room with thick curtains. I told myself it was just paranoia, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed me back. Not literally, maybe, but something had opened up. Something I couldn't close. A few weeks passed. Caleb stopped talking about maps. He moved on to video games, then back to baseball cards. I was glad. I didn't want him looking at that house again. I didn't want him seeing that face. I considered deleting the Google Maps app from his tablet, but that felt like overkill. Instead, I just kept an eye on him. Every time he picked up the tablet, I felt my chest tighten. One night, I was in the garage, going through some old boxes. I found one labeled, Mom's Stuff. I hadn't opened it since we cleaned out her house. Inside were photo albums, letters, some kitchenware. At the bottom was a small notebook. I recognized it immediately. She used to keep it by her bed. I opened it and flipped through the pages. Most of it was grocery lists, reminders to take her medication. But near the end, the handwriting changed. It got shakier, more frantic. One entry read, "He's in the house again. I heard him breathing. I stayed still. He didn't come into my room." Another, "I told Rachel but she doesn't believe me. I think he lives in the basement. I hear him moving at night." And then, "I saw him today. In the window. He was looking out. I think he knows about the camera." I dropped the notebook. I felt like I couldn't breathe. I picked it up again and kept reading. The last entry was dated September 3, 2017. It said, "I'm scared to sleep. I think he's waiting for me to fall asleep. My mother died on September 10th. I didn't know what to do with that information. I couldn't prove anything. There was no evidence. Just her words and that image. I thought about calling the police again, but what would I say? That my dead mother thought someone was living in her basement? That I saw a blurry face in a Google Street View image? I started having dreams. Not nightmares, exactly. Just strange, vivid dreams. I'd be standing in her house, alone. The lights would be off. I'd hear footsteps upstairs, even though I was the only one there. I'd walk to the window, and there he'd be, outside, staring in. Always the same face. Fell still what? I started sleeping with the bedroom door locked. My wife asked me why. I told her I was just being cautious. She didn't press. One afternoon, I got a call from Rachel. She said she'd found an old photo of the house, taken in 2016. She emailed it to me. I opened it and stared at it for a long time. The house looked normal. Peaceful. But in the window, the same window, there was a shadow. Not a face. Just a shape. Like someone had been standing there and moved just as the photo was taken. I called Rachel back and asked her if she saw it. She said, "What shadow?" I didn't push. I just said thanks and hung up. I started researching. Not about the house, but about people who live in other people's homes without being noticed. It's more common than you'd think. There are stories, real ones, about squatters hiding in attics, basements, crawl spaces. Living there for months, even years. I read about one case where a man lived in a woman's attic for over a year. She thought she was going crazy. Turns out he'd been sneaking down at night to steal food. I thought about the blankets. The chair. The locked basement door. I thought about my mother's notebook. I thought about the face. I started wondering if he was still out there. If he'd moved on to another house. If he was watching someone else now. Or if he was dead. Maybe he'd died in that basement and no one ever found him. Maybe he was never real. Maybe it was all in her head. Maybe it's in mine now. One night I went back to the Street View image. I stared at it for hours. I tried to convince myself it was a trick of the light. A reflection. A curtain bunched up in a strange way. But I couldn't. I knew what I saw. I saw eyes. I saw a face. I printed the image and put it in a drawer. I don't know why. Maybe to remind myself. Maybe to prove it to someone someday. Caleb's been asking more questions lately. About grandma. About the house. I keep my answers short. I don't want him going back to that image. I don't want him seeing what I saw. Sometimes I wonder if I should tell him. Not now, but someday. When he's older. When he can understand. Maybe I'll show him the notebook. Maybe I'll tell him about the trip. About the shed. About the curtain. Or maybe I won't. Maybe some things are better left unseen. But I saw it. And I'll never unsee it. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more content like this.